Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Colony Drop, a podcast that celebrates the entire meta-genre that is Mobile Suit Gundam. My name is Brian, my co-host is Isaac, and on today's episode we conclude our review of Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin. We pick up right where we left off last week with Isaac's favorite dysfunctional family, the Zabis. Hope you all enjoy.
Speaking of Zabis, I felt like Garma really came off as a tragic... I wouldn't even say he was a villain because he's a little more than a puppet for his family, right? He's only at the academy because his family wants him to be there. He only tries to excel because, that's what his family wants and because of his last name. I viewed him as very much a tragic character overall in this story, especially with how we know how he ultimately ends. Garma's not innocent by any stretch of the imagination, but it was just sort of sad, I think, watching him being so pressured and maybe not being the best person he wanted to be. It's kind of getting pulled along and strung along by Char. What do you think about Garma and seeing this side of Garma?
Yeah, I agree. He definitely has this major inferiority complex in basically every aspect of his life. He's worried about being seen as in the academy only because of his family. He's worried about not living up to Char. He's worried about having ranks below Char. He's worried about not having as good of an assignment as Char. He just the whole time he's worried about not being seen as in a position of power. There was one part where he was upset that he was being placed in a position not on the front lines, and he has to go ask Dozel to make it happen so that he could not just stay at the Zabi palace basically. And I agree, he tried really hard, and if you think about what Char's upset about, Garma really doesn't have anything to do with it, right? He's not involved in the plot to kill Zeon Zum Daikun. Garma's sin is his last name is Zabi, right? And that's kind of what Char tells him when he kills him, right? Doesn't he say blame this on the misfortune of your birth?
Something like that. Yeah.
If Garma maybe wasn't a Zabi, I don't know that Char would really care about killing him. It is pretty tragic. I agree.
Also, it was interesting. It was interesting that in their little garrison attack, it's really the Char show. Garma had almost nothing to do with it except pretty much giving the go ahead, and then I think he commands the mortar team, right? Far from the actual battle.
Yep. Yeah, he does some geometry and says, adjust your thing. That was actually a great scene too, because if you remember later that episode or the episode afterwards, the Zabis, they know that Char was the instigator. They know that Garma didn't do it on his own, and that's why they pull Char in and they, berate him or whatever. And I thought that was pretty in character for the Zabis because they're all sharp individuals. So they knew right away that Garma was being manipulated.
Yeah. He's a bit of a tone-deaf guy, too, even as a child. Remember, he was at the funeral, and, I guess he, kind of smiled at Char, right? You want to play later or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Char just gives him, a look to, silence him. And then Garma's like, oh, wait, I forgot we're at a funeral. We're supposed to be sad.
I mean, I guess if anything, Garma always came off as a very honest character. He was always trying really hard.
Yeah.
He just...
Remember when the Sashra dies?
Oh, yeah.
And Garma's understandably, Garma's freaking out. He had no idea the bomb was going to go off, but
yeah.
I think Kycelia was there to calm him down.
Good thing. Yeah, so this is actually interesting. I was reading some discussion online, just various forums, and some people were they had different takes on who killed Sasuro, and I thought it was very clear that Kycelia did it. Yeah, so what was your thought? Some people actually did think that Jimba did it, or maybe some people thought that Degwin and Girin did it. And I could almost see the Girin and Degwin one because of the way that sometimes the recap by the narrator is done. It kind of frames it like the Zabis wasted no time in taking control of the situation, and then they would show the car bomb. And I could sort of see that, but I thought it was very clear that Kycelia was out for revenge, and she hated Sasuro after he slapped her in front of the whole family.
I guess putting that information forward, Brian, you've sort of presented me a possible third option that Kycelia might have gone to Degwin and Girin and said, okay, Sasho needs to go.
Oh.
And we can use it to our advantage. Here's how.
Oh. That's interesting.
That's a possibility too. I mean, what also shocked me about the slap scene, the infamous slap, The slap heard across the across side 3.
Do you think it was more powerful than a bright slap?
Ooh, I'm gonna say, well, no, I'm gonna say no, because a bright slap can knock you off your feet. All right, a Sasro, I assume, sits at a desk usually, right, and he plots his little political schemes.
Based on his physical condition, yes, I think he sits at a desk.
Yeah,
Mini Degwin.
Yeah, I'll also say that Kycilia, to her credit, she took it like a champ. She didn't move.
Oh yeah,
her feet stayed planted. Her head moved, and her like upper body, I guess.
Yes.
But she was so stunned by it. She just sort of sat there frozen for a while. It's like, wow, that really happened.
Yeah. Well, she got her revenge.
Yeah.
So I'll say I do not think that Giran was in on it. I do know that Giran knows that Kycilia did it, because there's a scene later where he tells her to pray for Sasaro's soul in a knowing tone, and that was his way of telling her that he knows I know what you did. But I agree, maybe she did go to Degwin. Although I got the sense that Degwin liked Sasaro, so I'm not sure anymore. Other than I'm fairly confident that Kycilia was at least one of the people involved in that car bomb.
I don't see the Federation being involved at all. The Rawls obviously weren't involved by their horrified reaction at what happened. Yeah, this is Kycilia all over it. Maybe other parties, but definitely Kycilia. I don't remember Degwin having much love for Sasro in the brief time that we saw them together. Maybe just because he looks the most like him. He's the only child that looks like him. Actually.
Yeah. One thing I read on Sasaro that's interesting is apparently Sasaro, at least according to the wiki page, Sasaro was first mentioned in the original novelization of Mobile Suit Gundam. Obviously, he wasn't a big part and he didn't make it to the original series. But I guess he didn't originate in Origin, although it seems like Origin gave him pretty much all of his story.
That's interesting. Yeah. You'd have to go further before Origin to actually see his life, but it really has no bearing on Gundam, so I doubt we'll see more of Sasaro. Comment below if you're a big Sasaro fan.
I mean, he was dead by what, like 30 minutes in or so?
He just can't get enough of that slap. Bring back Sasaro's the Gundam slap pilot.
I mean, and then one more thing on that car bomb is, assuming Kycilia did it, I mean, talk about disregard for Dozel. I mean, poor dude was sitting right next to him. I guess she doesn't like Dozel either. Or maybe she viewed him as collateral damage.
I mean, in her defense, I'm not sure how good she is at car bombs, but it's pretty clear that she put the bomb under Sasaro's seat. So maybe she underestimated like how much of an explosion it actually make. She thought it'd be relatively small and Sasaro would die, but like Dozel would be mostly okay. And to her credit, he was pretty okay. I mean, it looked like he only had lacerations and bleeding. It didn't look like he had broken bones or damaged internally. At least, that was my estimate. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, that's fair. The explosion definitely was clearly directed right under Sasaro's seat. Yeah. Dozel was engulfed in flames, and it seems like he must have had some debris in his face. But yeah, he's a hulk of a man. And what did you describe him as in that previous episode we did? Like the tallest man ever or something? Like he's enormous.
Yeah, I don't remember the Zabi height lineup. There's an online image of like the Zabi height lineup, and I think he's like over 7 feet.
Yeah,
something insane.
he has to be. If there was a fight between like a bear and Dozel, I would bet on Dozel.
Probably. I mean, he survived an explosion. What could a bear do? We've seen him bend metal at like his bridge, commanding his fleet. So I think he'd be able to choke out a bear with like one hand.
Yeah, that's probably fair. There were so many good things with the Zabis in this show. I mean, there was that scene right before the Dawn Rebellion, which kind of sparks the Dawn Rebellion, where a Salamis class, I think it was a Salamis or maybe a Magellan class, crashes into that agricultural block. Do you think...
God, Captain McReckless.
Well, okay, was that guy really reckless, or was that done on purpose by Giran?
Ooh, how could Giran have done it? It looked like the pilot, or at least the captain, didn't want to obey. But it
was so reckless that I could not. It was so reckless that I could not believe that someone would actually do that, where they just like kept going forward and expected the other person to move. So I don't know. I sort of assumed that Giran was also behind that.
I think that's a fair estimation, but I just read that into being more of the Federation being somewhere on the border of, incompetent to corrupt and just inefficient again. It was typical Federation policy to sort of look down on the space noids and want to, be first in line or have everybody else move out of the way. I just saw it as that.
Yeah. Oh, that's probably fair. So one other thing I want to mention on Cassilia.
Sure.
I think she had one of the best scenes in the whole six films. It's that scene, I think it's either the last or next to last episode, where Degwin's having that discussion with Giran, and Degwin is saying we should use this point to stop and get an agreement with the Federation, and Giran says no, I want to keep going, and then Degwin compares him to Hitler and Napoleon, and then Giran leaves. And Degwin says something to Cassilia, who's been there the whole time, eavesdropping on the conversation, and he tells her, "You're the only one who's going to be able to get rid of Giran. Like he's going to tear this country apart." And I was like, "Oh, that makes so much sense given how the the original series ends." Like Degwin is now plotting against his own children using another child.
Man, what messed up the Zabis? Like. Mrs. Zabi, wherever you are, you got out the wrong time or at the right time.
Yeah,
filed for divorce and left for I don't know, Jupiter.
Yeah, we still don't know what happened to the original Miss Zabi. I think there's the second Miss Zabi is Garma's mother, as I understand it, but the other ones I think have a different mother. Maybe that's why Degwin is so protective of Garma. Is he's from the second marriage or the second wife. Maybe he loved that one better, or didn't end quite as bad. And she died in childbirth, I believe, based on the original novelization.
Well, that says a lot about Dozel then, and makes him an even nicer guy for, being so close and protective of Garma.
I think overall Dozel came out pretty good relative to his other Zabi brethren.
Yeah, you know what? If Dozel was on the Federation side, or even a character on like the White Base, he would be some of people's favorite characters because he'd be such a the big brother that's like really loud and boisterous and protective, a bit crude, but also like he would have like a lot of funny scenes and funny moments. He'd probably pilot like a really, heavy type mobile suit or something like that.
Yeah, he would be a good candidate to pilot your favorite GM cannon.
Yeah, oh yeah, the was it? Yeah, GM cannon from 083.
Yeah.
The Chobham armor.
Yeah, with
double Chobham armor.
Double. There's like a second layer.
You know what I liked in the slap scene a lot was how nobody saw it coming. Like if you know everybody has different reactions, like well Cassilia is always surprised it happened. Degwin wasn't in the room. I don't think Garma either was. I wonder what Degwin would have done if he actually saw it happen. I think he would have been upset.
Probably, yeah.
Dozel got really shocked, and I like how Giran doesn't say anything. He just like squints his eyes really quick. Like he was like, that must have hurt. Or even he didn't see that coming.
Yeah, well, at that point too, I mean, Sasuro was kind of the mastermind before Giran, right? So maybe Giran didn't want to criticize Sasuro. Not that he would, given that it's Cassilia and Giran kind of hates everybody. But Giran is definitely a watch and observe and scheme. So it kind of makes sense.
There you go. Another reason that Giran and Cassilia were probably in on it.
Could be. Two things I wanted to point out about Dozel that really shows how he's like a better Zabi, or like a better person than pretty much the rest of the Zabis.
The best of the Zabis.
Yes, relative. He still participated in the gassing, don't get me wrong.
I changed my mind. We'll put Garma at that level.
That's fair. I think there was this in the first episode maybe where they're chasing around, they're trying to get a hold of Casval and Artesia, and there's like some van or something full of kids, and Dozel doesn't want to fire on it, but Giran gives the order to go ahead and fire on it, and Dozel is just like floored that Giran would give such an order. And I don't think they end up killing the kids or whatever in the van, but right there, there's some hesitation. And then he's the only one really, after all of his men die, or not all of them, but a decent amount of Zeon soldiers die in the Battle of Loom. He's the only one that asks for a moment of silence, and he says, I will never forget our fallen comrades today. But Giran doesn't really care. He's just watching it all from a computer screen, right?
By himself.
by himself. creepily.
Yeah. The
Um,
lights off. Oh yeah, blow up that ship. Oh, they're running out of air. Oh yeah. Lock and load, Zaku.
then he takes a little hit of the double G gas. He's just like, ah.
I feel like I'm falling on Australia.
Oh, the Zabis. What a mess.
Christ, yeah. That's enough about the zombies for now.
Yeah.
You know who it could have done scene without? Lala. I know I'm not a big Lala fan, but did we really need to know how she and Char met? The whole little save her from trafficking and all that operation. I felt like it was a waste of time. We could have focused on something else in the story.
I know you're not a Lala fan. I thought it was good to see how they met, and maybe that Char kind of only cared about her the whole time, if you think about it, because given how it was presented in this series, they met, before the 1 Year War. But then they have a scene later where like all the women are flirting with Char after I think the Battle of Loom, when he's whatever, a lieutenant commander. He gets like a double rank promotion. So I thought it was nice to see that maybe at that point Char is very popular now, but he really only cares about Lala. So I thought it was good to see how they met. What I could have done without was that like sort of absurd like fight with the guy who used like this spinning throwy thing.
Oh yeah.
That's where it like kind of went too much for me. I don't think that was necessary. But again, it's kind of like the night scene, right? Like the suit of armor guy. We didn't really need that. It could have just been a different fight, maybe less over the top. I don't know.
You're right. Char has the weirdest combat scenes in person. Fights a knight. He fights a guy throwing like I don't know, what do you call that? A bladed
You know
circle?
what it reminds me of? Didn't Xena use that?
Yeah, that is I forgot what they're called. Not chakras. Chakra? I don't know. Something like that.
Was it chakram, maybe?
Maybe. I don't. Comment below if you're a medieval or ancient Southwestern Asian weapons expert.
Yeah.
You know exactly what kind of weapon that was.
It's called a chakram. Yeah.
So it's like a bladed frisbee, or not a bladed frisbee. It's like more like a bladed boomerang, like you launch at your enemy, but if you miss, you get a second shot because you get it back.
But like, why does it come back? It's not shaped like a boomerang.
Who knows?
But
maybe that guy was a new type. We'll never know. He went into seed mode, Brian, and he recalled it.
Oh, seed mode.
The seed cracks on the screen. That's how you know it's about to get real.
I would have just turned it off. That fight was at least cool because it gave us our first new type Flash.
Yeah.
So I'll give it that. But yeah, I could have done without the chakram fighting. But I was okay with seeing how he met Lala because I don't think we saw that in the original series. So I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So how about Ram Morale? So like I said before, I thought he was maybe the most heroic, maybe the hero we needed. The guy was a beast in a bar fight. He beat up like 5 Federation soldiers by himself.
Yeah.
What cracked me up was he drove a blue SUV, which I loved because that's his color. And I thought Hamon, his like wife or lover, whatever, I thought she was a great character in this. She was like, she gives credit to that saying, there's a successful woman behind every successful man. And I thought she was just really badass the whole time. She piloted that gun tank. She told off Cassilia's Secret Service members, and they kind of just like chickened out after they talked to her, and they just kind of scampered away.
They didn't expect to come into her like bar and face such verbal resistance.
Yeah, she got like a huge tongue lashing from her. I just thought she was a great character. She didn't get as much screen time as Ram Morale did in the original series, but yeah, she was cool. I liked her a lot. Speaking
of women that used to be at that bar, Char and Sayla's mom, she had just such a tragic story. I got pretty sad watching that. And I don't really care much for Char or Sayla too much, but I was like, God, they can't even see their mother. She has to stay behind and waste away on like literally like locked in a tower.
Yep.
I don't know why they included the whole bizarre thing where Zeon had a previous wife and she's a nut.
Yeah, that was really strange. Well, I think it was because she couldn't have children, basically.
Yeah, she said that. But I mean, just the whole the whole plot of it being there. Like you could have almost just had Char's mom just be killed in, I don't know, the chaos of the transition in power or something like that. It just seemed odd that she withered away really and died in a tower.
Yeah,
So
I
I guess
agree.
the whole point of the original first wife, I guess, was just to be the dragon that kept her locked away.
Yeah. So there was two things I was going to ask you about Estrella. So one, this kind of plays into the whole night scene, like the night combat. So the whole night thing is very like medieval / fairy tale thing, right? Like Char fights this knight to save
Yeah.
his sister, and then I got the same like medieval fairy tale vibe from Estrella being locked in this tower. So maybe they were just trying to create this overall fairy tales
Yeah.
like narrative for Char and Sayla. So maybe that's what they were going for.
I could see that. Yeah.
Still weird that a guy shows up in a suit of armor and attacks you, but
I feel like it's very much a corrupted fairy tale in a way because Sayla doesn't really do anything but go from tragedy to tragedy in this series, and Char pretty much becomes a worse person. This is very much the tragedy of Char. He goes from being, a son of a political leader and assumingly a pretty normal boy to becoming such a manipulative and murderous person at the end of the series, rightly or wrongly. Whatever you think about his quest for revenge, I assume it's justified. I would doubt anybody would agree that his desire for revenge isn't justified considering everything that happens to his family at the hands of the Zabis. At the end of it all, he's not a good person, I think. From Origin through the original series, Zeta, Double Zeta, to Char's counterattack. Not a good person. So the fairy tale, I feel like, turns very much into a nightmare if this is the case.
yeah, you're right. The fairy tale ends poorly for him, and he goes on a revenge plot. And although he's justified relative to the Zabis, maybe he's less of a bad person relative to the Zabis, but that doesn't make him necessarily a good person, like you said.
Yeah, and more so, or at least even more tragically, the Zabi name ultimately transitions into being under Maneva something that's more hopeful, definitely more aspiring to help people and end conflicts instead of starting them for power and wealth.
You know why? That's because Maneva was Dozel's kid, and Dozel
You got me there.
and Dozel was a gregarious oaf, the heart of gold. That he gassed some people one day, but relative to where he came from, maybe that wasn't the worst.
That's true. I mean, if he didn't, you could make the argument that Cecilia Ensgiren would probably begin plotting his death, right?
Oh, for sure. At some point.
Yeah. Wasn't it really cute how Dozel met his wife?
So it was cute, but it was also creepy because at that point, isn't she only like, well, I don't know. How old are you in the military academy?
I assume this is post high school, so this is essentially their college, right? I mean, you only go to like West Point or like the Air Force Academy after you graduate high school.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Maybe that's fair because I guess at the time Dozel would have been in his like low 20s, mid 20s.
He's a grizzly man. I would be generous at saying he's in his late 20s at his youngest.
No, I'm pretty sure Dozel. So
oh, God,
no, he's
you're
supposed
right.
to be 27.
I think you're right now. Yeah.
Dozel's 28 in Mobile Suit Gundam. So if the military academy was what, I don't know, I forget the exact year, but let's say 5 to 10 years before that. So that would put him in his like mid 20s probably when he did that. So
Wow.
okay, I'll give that to you.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's creepy. Like.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Completely inappropriate. But I don't know. Like it was like her bravery kind of impressed him. So he was like, "Wow, the one person they send to try to keep me here is her."
Yeah, that's the woman I want. Yeah. No, I think thematically it makes sense for Dozel, but yeah, just the age difference maybe it's a little interesting.
Also, like, could she refuse? He outranks her. Like,
yeah, I know, right?
Hopefully, the Xeon military has appropriate protections for such levels of harassment.
Yeah, maybe Dozel will get Me Too'd.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to bring up about Estrella and get your opinion on was, I mean, clearly she died from some illness.
I assumed it was heartbreak, but I don't know.
Do you think they poisoned her as well?
Ooh. Oh, you mean the Zabis?
Yeah.
Was there any hint that like somebody there was poisoning her? I know the little butler staff there seemed pretty oppressive in their approach to keeping her there, but I would have hoped that they would have hinted that like, oh, it's time for your peppermint tea or something like that, or have that old lady say, prepare her more tea or something like that. And then we would
Yeah,
have been like, they're making a big point about the tea. It must be something in the tea.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that there was really any hint of that. It just seemed odd to me that they clearly poisoned Xeon,
Yeah.
and she was his wife. They sort of locked her away in this tower. This is the only place that the Zabis will let her be and sort of not do anything. So just her being around is a threat to them. Why not get rid of her? And they didn't say why she was mad. I mean, I think the official explanation is just that it was like stress, or just like you said, heartbreak of being away from her children. So yeah, I don't know. I thought poison was a plausible explanation, but yeah.
It's plausible. If they did it, if that's actually the reason, I think it could have been done better and shown to us more clearly. But I assumed it was a combination of not being allowed to leave that room, so that's not good for your mental health, combined with, the loss of her husband. She's not able to see her children. She's indoors all day. She's not getting vitamin D. They killed her the most politically efficient way, I guess they could kill her without killing her.
I'm gonna add that to the wiki. Vitamin D deficiency.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Zabis' newest weapon is vitamin D deficiency.
That's gonna get you.
We're going straight for the liver.
And then, so we've talked about the gun tanks. We've talked about the gun cannons. Wow, what an embarrassment.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the mobile workers or the Zaku's really, as well as the various capital ships, because I thought the capital ships had quite the showing here. Yeah. And I know you love your capital ships.
Awesome fleet battle.
Yeah. So what did you think? I felt like the Magellans and this Salamises seemed a lot more resilient than the Musais in this. Did you get that?
Well, yeah. And what I loved also about this series, what I enjoyed. Goodness, loved was a strong word. Let me take that back. What I like seeing was a little reward to people that pay close attention is we clearly see what the Musais are based on. Early on in the series, they're based on like these shipping ships, these transport ships, civilian, that are used by Side 3. They have the same appearance. They're just not, the color, and they don't have like a bridge and all that, or weapons, but they're clearly transport ships painted white, and they look like Musais. So I assumed this shows that Xeon ships weren't some newfangled capital ships that they developed to, outgun Salamises or outgun Magellans. Because at the end of the day, you don't even need to count the guns. You just can look at a Musai and a Salamis or a Magellan, and the Musai has way less weapons. So yeah, I just took this to mean that the reason the Musais are so fragile is that they're really using transport ships that have been upgraded, whereas the Salamis and the Magellans are obviously designed by a very well-funded government for space combat.
I did like Dozel's little explanation at the end, where he's like, "Oh, our Musais, they're great because they have a better profile, and there's better forward shielding," and then like they immediately get hit by all these Federation beam weapons, and they just start crumbling. And even Garma's like, "But you said they had good shields."
That was bullshit. I don't believe anything Dozel says that's like technical or technical in nature. If it came from Minovsky, I would believe him, but it didn't come from Minovsky.
Yeah. I gotta say, never has the Zaku been as cool as it was in this show.
It was awesome, man. I love it. Even the mobile worker. I love seeing it in like their little test fight, right, where they just sort of blast it with machine guns from the gun tank and stuff like that.
Yep.
It really held up on its own. But man, they make these Zaku's move like Gundams.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They're doing like flips and stuff, and like they're blowing up Salamises left and right, and throwing bazookas to each other and.
Yep.
It was pretty awesome. It's the Zaku show, and it shows just how outclassed the Federation space fighters were.
you could tell just how much the animators loved the Zaku. I'm sure all the animators probably grew up watching Gundam, and now
Yeah.
they got to make, like you said, the Zaku show, right? And
Yeah.
they gave the Zakus, better weapons than we've ever seen the Zakus have, right? Char had that huge rifle in the very beginning that shot like a round, and it would penetrate into a ship and then blow up inside the
Yeah.
ship. Oh man, that thing was super sweet. And then they gave the TriStars that huge heat hawk that had thrusters on the back of the axe head, so that you'd be able to force it through a ship. And then that's what one of the TriStars does to Rebel's ship, which was amazing. And those bazookas, that were kind of a joke in the original series because Amuro would just like avoid them. That maybe they're not so good in mobile suits and mobile suit combat, but they
Right.
really ruled the day here in the Battle of Loom. Those bazookas took out all the Federation ships.
I know. Like, this really captures how revolutionary mobile suit combat was. I can't think of anything in our own lifetimes that compares to it, but it must have been like the appearance of tanks on the battlefield for the first time, or even airplanes.
Yeah.
You could even make the case it might have been as revolutionary as the first guns. Man, they just tore fleets up to pieces. I loved watching it. The battle didn't go how I originally thought the lore said it went, but it was still fun to watch. I mean, I just can't believe how many fleets the Federation had out there, and then they sort of just determined, oh, we've got to pull back. The Tianan fleet was, I guess, ultimately they from the jaws of defeat they could have snatched victory, but they didn't. And man,
they had the Great Degwin in their sights. All they had to do was go through.
Guarded by like 4 ships or something.
Yeah. I think it was 2.
Would Degwin really have stood his ground, or? I don't think Degwin's the type to stand his ground. He would have had his escort fleet, stay behind and buy him time to boost out of there to Side 3.
Yeah. So definitely the Zaku show. I think Char Zaku went the fastest we've ever seen any mobile suit go.
Yeah, you could almost say it moved like a red comet.
Oh,
speaking of things we noticed, if you remember Degwin scenes, like I do, Degwin has like this little assistant. Like, this guy has a uniform that looks nothing like a military uniform, and he has like a ponytail. He's like I don't know. This is a young-looking guy that's like always helping Degwin walk around. Do you remember that guy?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't
Okay.
think I do.
Like, I was hoping for an explanation of this guy. Like, okay, is he like a cousin of the Zabis or something like that? Was he at the academy with like, Char and Garma, and he was like, I really want to, work in government rather than the military. But yeah, this guy's whole job is to, like, whenever Degwin needs to walk somewhere, he's the arm Degwin holds on to.
I can't say I remember that guy.
Clearly, you aren't memorizing Degwin scenes the way I am.
Yeah, I will defer to you on any Degwin scene for sure.
Why, Brian? Because you're just an Earthborn elite. You're just a Fetty.
just a Fetty. You know what? At least I don't have cosmic ray damage on my eyes.
How dare you say that? I have to take eye drops. I have to take them at random times when people are trying to get close to my face.
Oh, excuse me. Don't look. I need to put my eye drops in. Can you hand me my leader ball mask?
Excuse me, fellas. I got to go to this dark corner and put liquid in my face. Do you remember that admiral that like Rebel was talking to a lot? The guy who just stayed on Earth?
Oh, Admiral Dopp.
Old guy?
Admiral Dopp. Yep. I think he was Rebel's boss.
Yeah, it seemed like he runs the Federation, and I don't know. I feel like there were a lot of things going on that we weren't completely shown or explained, like how he and Makuve kind of shared like a weird look, right? And then during Rebel's speech, they look at each other again, like they're like, "Oh, we knew this was coming," or "Here we go again." So I'm not sure if there was some communication between Makuve and Dopp. So,
well, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility. I mean, Makuve did lead the Earth invasion team, right? So if Dopp is on Earth, it's highly likely that he's dealing with Makuve or communicating with Makuve, at least in some fashion. I mean, leaders do communicate even during wartime. So
yeah, That's true. You know what else was a cool scene when all the admirals were I think it was on the Great Day when we see like a bunch of like admirals and stuff that are part of Xeon. I forgot who mentions it. Maybe it was Giran. He said like if we lose this war, we'll be killed or executed for crimes against humanity, and like all of them kind of visibly get like nervous.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What I really wish I would have seen was like Delaz in that lineup. Like, I wish they included him because we saw like a bunch of other fleet admirals and officers that we've seen, but we didn't see Delaz.
Yeah, I agree. I rewound that part to check to see if and there was anyone in there we knew, and the only person I noticed was Makuve. I did look for Delaz. Yeah.
He should have been there. Yeah, he should have been there, yeah. And it also would have been great to see Shima at the casting of the colony.
Yeah, I was hoping for that too. Alas.
Such a pity.
And a similar scene that was really cool too was there was a scene, I forget which episode it was. I think it was before the one you just mentioned, because they wouldn't have been war criminals quite yet. It was when all the Zabis were on one side of the table and Revel and all the Federation were on the other side of the table. And it occurred to me that we didn't see that in the original series, right? Like they were already at war. They had no reason to talk to each other in person.
Right.
But it was very surreal to be like, oh, there's all of the political characters and they're all in the same room. That's new.
I think that was when Revel's being told that like the Federation has to withdraw, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. That would have been right after the Dawn Rebellion, I think.
Probably not what the Federation wanted to hear.
Nope. And then Revel just gave it to him at the end.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to add in is that we already knew that Tem Ray was not a great father, but this show proved that he was a terrible father. There is literally a scene where Tem Ray comes home late and Frau Bo is leaving Amuro's house, basically because it seems like Frau is pretty much feeding and taking care of Amuro. And
other things.
Maybe. And Frau basically nicely accuses Tem of being a bad father. She basically says something like, I think you should spend more time with him. Okay, I gotta go, bye. And then she runs away. And so what does he do? He goes in and immediately orders Amuro to make him coffee and yells at him, which immediately proves that he is a terrible father. I couldn't believe it.
Was this after the scene where he comes home and like Amuro's like walking around in his underwear and like the house is a mess and he's like, the least you could have done is clean up and put on clothes when people come over or something like that?
Yes, that is exactly the scene I'm talking about.
Okay, all right.
And that is also that is also the scene where he says, I can't believe you weren't wearing pants and you had a girl over. And I was like, well,
Mr. Ray, I'm sure you were a young man once. Your son and the girl were clearly studying. I bet, yeah. Studying with the parents not home. Talk about hitting the books. Talk about studying hard.
I'm not sure we can label this as a clean podcast anymore.
Not anymore. Not when Frau Bo's around.
She gave Amuro an A.
Oh, yeah. They call her Big Bo.
A in engineering.
He knows where all the parts go.
He's very hands-on mechanical.
Took her to the secret room.
Anyway.
Well, Brian, overall, just from the bottom of your heart, first thing that pops in your mind, first thoughts, what do you think about Gundam Origin?
I really enjoyed it. I think, given what it is, it's prevented from being great because it's not the main story. It's this thing that has to exist around the main story and can only do so many things. But with what it gave us, I thought it was great and I really enjoyed it. So I give it 8 out of 10 Haros.
Damn, 8 out of 10 Haros. Wow.
Well, okay.
I'm gonna
hold on. Let me qualify that.
We're having a live edit in progress.
So I think if you're a fan of Gundam, or if you've been a fan of Gundam for a long time and you really like the Universal Century, I think I would give this an 8 out of 10 Haros just for showing us Operation British, the Battle of Loom, and all the scenes with the Zabis and all of Char and Sayla's backstory. If you have not watched Mobile Suit Gundam, maybe are not a fan of the Universal Century, then I think this is probably going to be closer to like a 6 out of 10 Haros for you.
That is a perfect analysis, sir. Once again, you're once again you show your new type abilities, Brian, because that was excellent. I'm going to agree on everything except one thing. I'm going to add a 0.5 to the score for, well, at least the 8.5 score if you've seen other series in the Universal Century. This is one you should definitely watch because it rewards everything that you know. You get to see how things started. You get to gain more insight into the characters and how they got where they are. So it's definitely worth a watch in that way. If you haven't seen any Universal Century, or maybe only seen one Universal Century series, don't watch this series yet. You wait until you've watched, like, Zeta, Shark's Counterattack, the original series, 083, even 8th MS Team, I can get. Well, maybe not. You wait till you watch more Universal Century before diving into this, because this is a prequel, okay? So you're not going to know a lot of what's going on, and there actually isn't a Gundam in it. There's pictures of a Gundam, but there isn't actually a Gundam in it.
They say the word Gundam a few times, but...
very briefly. So I would say hold off on that until then. But the animation's beautiful. It's a great story. The combat is beautiful. You won't see a Gundam, but you'll see awesome Zaku combat, awesome fleet battles. Say what you will about the original series, but I think one detraction from it was that the fleet battles weren't always massive in scale. You really don't see more than, I'd say there's 3 major fleet battles, maybe 2 only. In this series, though, you see possibly the biggest battle or second biggest battle of the 1 Year War in its entirety. So I really enjoyed seeing that.
You know why you don't see any more fleet battles? Because all the ships were destroyed in this one.
You're right about that, yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, because you mentioned the animation, man, that tease at the end where they showed the white base in the new animation style, it made the white base look glorious. And I wish they would animate the rest of the manga volumes for the Origin.
I think we're heading there. There's no reason not to keep this ball rolling. So hopefully we see that in production after whatever else they're doing. I think it'd be awesome. Yeah.
It looked great. And
absolutely.
And then we wouldn't have to sit here and say, if you haven't seen Gundam, don't watch this. We could say, if you haven't seen Gundam, please watch all of it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the perfect jumping off point because it ends on such an awesome note. If you really enjoyed Origin, and it's hard not to enjoy it unless you have no idea what's going on, you would definitely be pumped to watch the rest of the series unfold right from this starting point.
Yeah. You see Bright on that ship. Oh, okay. This will be the last thing I mentioned.
Sure.
There was one thing I really enjoyed about this is throughout the show, they used the original, like, I don't know, I was trying to find what song it is on the original soundtrack for Mobile Suit Gundam, but that theme that has the horns in it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, they kept that. They kept that in here. I mean, they updated it a little bit so it sounded a little bit newer, but I thought that was a great throwback. And then at the very end, at least of the dub, they add "Who will survive?" And that was always said by the Mobile Suit Gundam narrator, and I thought that was the perfect way to end it. I loved that. And that's what makes me so upset that the rest of the series is not redone in this animation. So, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. But, I'm optimistic. Why not go back to the past and just polish it up and re-release it?
We would buy it, Sunrise Bandai. Put it out there.
Absolutely. More importantly, we talk about it on this podcast.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode. If you have any comments on Gundam the Origin, if you know where the Knight guy came from, the guy in shining armor that Char fought, please comment and tell us. Otherwise, smash that like button, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Who will survive?